it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we're making churro cookies. All right, I don't know about you, but anytime I have a churro, I need chocolate sauce on the side to dip it in. So for these churro cookies, incorporating chocolate was a no-brainer. So we're actually going to be doing that by stuffing the chocolate inside the cookie. Let's make this really quickly. You're going to need 6 ounces of either chopped bittersweet or semi-sweet chocolate. You can use those baking bars. I'm using couverture chocolate. That's just a little more convenient. I don't have to do any chopping that way. And I'm going to add some heavy cream to this. This is just 2/3 cup of heavy cream. And I'm going to take this over to the microwave where I'm going to heat it until the chocolate and cream are completely melted and smooth. Now with chocolate, you always want to heat it slowly. So I just do 25 seconds to start. Make sure to stir it because you want everything mixed in there. And then if it's not melted, like mine isn't, it goes back in the microwave for another 20 seconds, and then I'll heat again in 10-second or even 5-second intervals if we're really close, stirring well in between until it's completely melted and smooth. So it looks really piecey, like it's all separated at first, but if you keep stirring, that chocolate's going to melt even more. And I want to put this in the microwave as little as I have to, so I stir it really, really well before I take it back to the microwave. Still a little lumpy, we'll do another 5 seconds. All right, nice and smooth, but you are going to have a lot of trouble fitting this inside a cookie right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this solidify until it is scoopable. So I'm going to speed up the process by putting it in the fridge, and usually in under 20 minutes, it's ready to be scooped. All right, so I just pulled this out of the fridge, and you can see it's in a more semi-solid state. So we can go ahead and start scooping this. The important thing is that when we scoop it into our dollops, it stays in dollop form. It doesn't just spread into a puddle. So I'm going to be scooping this into 1 tablespoon-sized scoops, and I'm just going to drop these directly onto a wax paper lined baking sheet, small one so I can fit it in my freezer. I'm just going to scoop as many of these chocolate dollops as I can. If you're going by weight, I find the ganache dollops usually come out to about 15 grams a dollop. Now today's recipe is going to make 16 nice large cookies. You're going to get closer to 18 or 19 dollops, so you will have 1 or 2 extra. That's fine. You can snack on them if you want. They're really basically truffles once they're solidified, but I found it was better just to have a little bit extra in case you have a heavy hand when you're measuring, and just because the measurements are much simpler that way. If we were to scale that down, you'd have some really awkward measurements to get exactly the right amount. Okay, so these are obviously not firm enough to pick up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop these in the freezer where they're going to sit while we make our cookie dough. They will probably need a minimum of 15 minutes in the freezer. That gives us time to make our dough. And it's also going to give our oven time to preheat. You want to get your oven preheating to 375 degrees Fahrenheit while these chill. All right, while that's chilling, let's make our cookie dough. First thing you need is a cup of softened, unsalted butter. We'll add this right into our mixing bowl. We'll also add a cup of firmly packed light brown sugar and a ½ cup of granulated sugar. And we're going to beat these ingredients together until they are creamy and well combined. All right, once everything's looking light and fluffy, we'll crack our eggs. So for today's recipe, you want to use 1 large egg and 1 large egg yolk, and these should ideally be at room temperature. All of your ingredients should really be at room temperature. So if you've ever had a churro before, you probably know it is actually just made of pâte à choux, which is really mostly just egg, flour, and water. So churros themselves don't have a lot of flavor. Talking to you and forgot what I was doing. I'll drop my egg yolk right in there. But what I was saying is churros don't really have a ton of flavor themselves. Then we deep fry them, roll them in cinnamon sugar, and dip them in chocolate. So we're not deep frying these cookies, but I wanted to enrich them with plenty of flavor so you really got the full churro experience in a cookie. So we're adding our eggs, which choux pastry has plenty of, and we're adding plenty of things to help enrich the flavor, like 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract as well. That being said, I still think we did a pretty good job of balancing the flavor so the whole cookie is surprisingly not too rich, just like a churro is, you know, you keep eating them. They're not too rich either. So let's stir these ingredients in. All right, and let's get our dry ingredients now. Starting with 3 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll be adding 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and the cornstarch serves a couple of purposes. It's going to help the cookies keep from spreading too much. It's going to give them a lighter, more tender texture. Works really well here. Also is going to help keep that filling from spilling out, which is obviously very important. Before we get to our salt, we'll add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, just 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. That all in there. That'll help the cookies spread just a little bit. We'll also be adding 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. We'll whisk these together until everything is nicely combined. You really want to make sure that salt and those leavening agents are well incorporated. Otherwise, you're going to have cookies that don't bake in the oven the way that you want them to. Nobody wants to bite into a pocket of baking powder either. All right, and we'll bring back our wet ingredients. We're going to gradually add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. And I do mean gradually. This dough is by design a little bit dry. So if you add all of your flour ingredients at once, it's going to be too dry. It's going to be really, really difficult for you to incorporate everything. It's just going to be a giant pain in the butt. So I usually add the dry ingredients in like 3 or 4 parts. And if you're wondering if you can do this in a stand mixer instead of using an electric hand mixer, yes, you absolutely can, no problem, just use the paddle attachment. I just want to pause here because you can see how dry and crumbly this looks, and we still have plenty of flour to add. This is normal. You just keep mixing until it's uniform and well combined and there's no flour, and then you add your next pocket, and again, you'll stir again until it's nice and uniform. All right, things are still looking a little dry, but let me grab a spatula and I'll show you how your dough should look. We're gonna go a little bit further with the mixer. I just want to be scraping the sides and bottom because there's some flour settled on the bottom that we're having trouble getting to. This will help turn it up, and we'll stir again. This thing is overambitious. All right, so our dough should be clinging to itself. You shouldn't have any dry spots remaining. So we are ready to start scooping it. And by this time, our chocolate should be nice and solid and ready to fill our cookie dough. So I'm going to pull that out of the fridge. I'm going to grab all of it, but generally when I'm baking, I recommend only working with 2 or 3 dollops of the chocolate at a time because it can actually start to melt pretty quickly in your kitchen, and that can make it difficult to work with. So let me grab that chocolate. All right, these are very cold, but they should be nice and solid for you to pick up. So let's make our cookies, and these are big, like gourmet style cookies. So we're using 1/4 cup of dough per cookie, which is just a little bit less than fills my cookie scoop. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this into a ball, and this should be rolling just fine for you. It shouldn't be crumbling. If it's crumbling, you might need to mix your dough more, or you may have accidentally measured your flour a little bit too heavy. So once I roll it into a ball, I'm going to use my thumb to press an indent in the center. Take one of these ganache dollops and I will drop that right in there. And then I'm going to form the dough around it and roll it into a smooth ball again. And if you find you need to add a little bit more dough to seal in that chocolate, then don't hesitate to add it, because if any chocolate is poking through, then that's going to leak right out of your cookie onto your baking sheet. And right after forming these, I like to roll them through cinnamon sugar because churros need cinnamon sugar. So I have a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon that I'm going to whisk together. And we will roll our cookie dough right through that, drop that right on our baking sheet. And we'll do this with the rest of our cookie dough. These are pretty big cookies, so I'll usually do about 4 cookie dough balls per cookie sheet, per standard sized cookie sheet. And I do want to make sure I space the cookies at least 2 inches apart, maybe even a little bit more. They're not going to spread a ton, but they'll spread enough that you want to give them a little breathing room. All right, for extra insurance and to keep the ganache from spilling out, one thing I like to do is pop these in the freezer for 10 minutes before I bake them. While they're chilling, I'll preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and then these will need to bake for about 13 minutes. All right, now when these are finished baking, it's normal to notice a little bit of crackling on top. If you were a little scant on some of your dough, you may have a little bit of chocolate peeking through. I actually kind of like that look, so I'm good with that. I try to go with a little less dough, that way I get a higher ratio of chocolate filling. But you can also tell they're done by looking at the sides. The sides should be nice and set and maybe even turning a very, very light golden brown. Just don't over bake these cookies or they're going to be dry, and that would be a real bummer. So we're going to let these cool on the cooling sheet before we dig in. And remember, while they are warm, that inside chocolate filling is going to be super hot, so just proceed with caution when biting in. All right, these have had enough time to cool that I can pick them up. I want to show you the interior, how this looks. Oh yeah. All right, that is how you make these churro cookies. I am really excited for you to try them at home. If you do, let me know what you think because I always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching and I will see you next time. All right, this one's a little warmer out of the oven. Let's dig in. They're such a good cookie.